What's up, Rockstars, and welcome to my review of Ancient Blood, The Order of the Vampire Hunters. This is by Dark Gate Games. This is kind of their spiritual successor, sequel, kind of prequel, I guess, kind of take on their original game. There's a lot of changes, a lot to discuss. There's a lot different about this, but there's still a lot that's the same as well. So let's dive right into it. As always, a huge shout out to my patrons and YouTube members. It is through their financial support that this channel is possible. This is a community-driven channel, so I do the videos that will benefit you and that help you, not necessarily companies. And additionally, it means that I don't take any money from any game developer, so that you know I give you my honest opinions, not my wallet's opinions. So my biases stay the same and all of that kind of stuff. It's not paid for or bought in any way. If you do appreciate that, there is a link down below to Patreon, and I greatly appreciate it. Thank you so much. Now, with that out of the way, let's go ahead and dive into this. And I will say, especially with this, preface that this is, of course, a prototype. You guys already saw that in the disclaimer that I put in there, but I wanted to verbally say that as well, because everything you see here is not exactly what you'll get. These are cheaper components. These are, resin miniatures, right? It's all subject to change. There's all subject to improve or do things different or balance things or change mechanics. You guys know how Kickstarter works, where they put something up that's a little bit early and then they continue to develop on it. So just keep that in mind. This is mostly to tell you where they are when they're asking for money on a Kickstarter or on a GameFound campaign, so you kind of know what to expect and kind of where they're at, and also to get some early feedback for them as well. Hopefully this is beneficial to them, so that any kind of critiques I have can always be worked on and stuff like that. So just FYI with all that. Now, with that being said, one thing I think that's going to stay standard is just how quick of a setup this game is. To be honest, everything you see here is pretty much the game, and I mean both phases. You have the town phase here, you have the dungeon crawl here, you have like a little pass system. In the proper thing, you would have a printed out like a storybook and terror book and stuff like that. So, and we'll get into that in a little bit, but really, this is pretty much it. It's actually pretty darn quick. The dungeon crawl section that I played was just through these 3 tiles here, and actually this is midway through a game. You don't actually spawn typically, unless you're like doing a specific fight where you stumble upon them or something like that. With all of the enemies in there, you spawn them as you kind of go and explore. And so you just lay the tiles down and you put the doors on and you're done, pretty much. There's an objective token that, you place these on all the rooms. You follow a setup guide, but there's not a whole lot of minis to deal with or anything like that. And even then, the count isn't huge. This isn't like a Zombicide or something where you're throwing like a whole bunch of minis on there. Now, there's a healthy amount, but it's not ridiculous like that, right? So this was actually pretty darn slick. And as you can see, both faces set out not even half of this table. This is a small footprint as well on the table. You guys could really probably play this on a coffee table. Now, you'd have to put the books somewhere else, and you'd have to probably not even set this up on an end table, and then this on the coffee table, and then you're probably pretty good. The thing that honestly takes up probably more space besides the map is your player boards, right? Because you do have player boards with special ability cards, with item cards and stuff like that. So that can get about this big per person, but really, that's it. I was really happy to see how quick this got to the table, and especially when we decided to finally play, it was like, okay, let's go and set it up. And I was like, man, I don't like setting up games. This went smooth. This went nice. Really did enjoy it. And then we had plenty of room. I didn't have to expand the table. This isn't some like huge tabletop game. This is a pretty streamlined experience, and it shows in just its setup as well, I believe. This is literally about as messy as I could make it look, without really, really trying. Now, of course, none of that really matters if you're looking at stuff that's ugly. And while this is a prototype, I mean, this art is already here. These minis are already sculpted. Now, while they're resin, the sculpt doesn't really change too much, unless it's to accommodate, the PVC manufacturing process. But really, like, between the art and the style of everything, this looks awesome. I mean, these minis, you guys saw it in the unboxing. I'm going to link down below to the unboxing. I did a detailed close-up unboxing of all these, but they are fantastic minis. They really are nice. Like, they're really good. They got textured bases, which I appreciate. Their chains are awesome. They're sculpted really, really cool. They're actually fairly dynamic, which I also appreciate. There's like cape wings and stuff. I mean, it's wild. It reminds me thematically of Bloodborne, and I see that in such a good way. Partially because everybody's wearing hats. So that's part of it. And you even have like the the kind of steampunky, kind of Victorian kind of look to everything. Look, guys, it looks great. It really does. If you're anything like me, you see something like this, and you're like, oh my gosh, yes, tell me more about this game of yours and how I might purchase it and put it on my table and admire it. Or unbox it and stick on the shelf and never play it. Depends on if you're a collector, board game, or whatever. Anyway, looks really good and like throughout the thing. The only thing I would say, and it could just be this prototype, though I have gotten other games from this company and it tends to be a little dark. And I appreciate dark, but sometimes it can be hard to see. These map tiles I think are fantastic. Some of the locations here, or some of the items, especially the enemy art though specifically, is just like dark on dark. It's like different shades of black. And it's just not quite enough to really make that beautiful art stand out from this view, right? I mean, if you're looking at it, it looks great, right? In the unboxing, it looks great. But from here, looking at it, it's just not a whole lot. Additionally, some of these tiles are a little bit hard to see, perhaps, but this very prototypey, it's shiny, it's like this weird linen thing going on there. That's not representative at all, so I can't make a judgment call that. I just want them to know I want to make sure I can see it like the map. Like I do want to see the art because it is really good art because it looks awesome. Now, one of the big changes that is in this new version is more narrative, right? This is much more story-based. And I must say, going through what story I saw, whether it was the random events that I came across in the town, or that I was going through out in the adventure, or leading up to the dungeon crawl, or by a path card or anything like that, they were honestly very interesting events. It was just kind of an interesting world. How people reacted to me, or this party of hunters really is kind of interesting. You come across all sorts of different things. It's not just a simple like, oh, I'm going to go from town over to the dungeon crawl. Now, sometimes it is, and sometimes it's this wild adventure where everything goes wrong and you have to deal with it on your way there. And it just depends on the paths you take. I'll talk a little bit about that and a little bit more, but it's a very choose your own adventure-ish kind of style thing, right? Where you kind of get two options, you pick which one to do, and then you pick two options and you pick which one to do, and you go through that process. But the events and what's happening, very interesting. People can attack you, people can be friendly with you, you can purchase stuff from people, you can be cautious, you can be aggressive. There's a lot of ability to get that kind of role play feel, which was quite nice and I think very enjoyable. The one thing I would say, and this is really a note for the prototype, but also to let you guys know where it is it was probably one of the most rough written stories that I've read among prototypes. So it almost seemed like bullet points, but without the bullet points. Like it just structurally, it was very much this happens and then this happens and this happens. Like there's zero dialogue in the entire thing. Instead of dialogue, it would be like the person tells you all about it, or the person tells you about it with great concern. Or you don't trust them, and so you do this, and it's very matter-of-fact statement. Now, obviously, there's probably translation stuff involved, and of course, it's a prototype. But want to let you guys know this was one of the roughest ones I've had to date. So it was very much it was like reading a bullet point. It's like reading an outline to a story more than a story. So I really, really do want them to flesh that out. I'm sure they will, but I don't know if they plan on just kind of smoothing it out or doing a full rewrite. And really, it almost needs a full rewrite because it needs dialogue in there, right? It needs to figure out the perspective. Sometimes it's from a specific hunter, and sometimes it's referring to the whole group. And so, in other words, sometimes it's you, and sometimes it's you as in like you all. And so there's a little kind of confusion around that, and a few other things. It needs work, right? It needs a lot of work to get there. But the core nugget of the story I did really enjoy. Like what's actually happening is cool. Now, one problem I have with the city phase is that it's just skill checks, like always. Not only is it skill checks, but it's random skill checks. You might go to the blacksmith because you do some, and an event happens, and you didn't expect an event to happen, but it did. And and now you have to test your strength, and you weren't expecting to test your strength. You're weak in strength, so then you fail it. So then it has you do a persuasion check, and you weren't expecting that, and you do that, and you fail that, and you have no real rhyme or reason or way to deal with it. It's just all random, and so you can't plan for it. You can't mitigate it. You can't manipulate it. You're just kind of stuck there a little bit. There are some tokens you can get, though you don't have a good control over getting those, that can help with a stat check once. But it's so minor. It's just, not only that, but regardless of whether you can manipulate it or not, it's still just skill checks. And I personally... And I know this might hurt a lot of D&D people, but I think D&D has other things going for it, and the skill checks are just a means for the role play, and I think that's fine. This is not a means for the city phase, it's just skill checks, and I'm not a fan of skill checks. I look forward to the day when we start signing off on not doing mindless skill checks anymore, and find a better way to keep me engaged on whether I survive a rock falling or not. And we can chalk it up, just like roll to move, as something we used to do that we've moved on from. I don't like it. It's just, I'm not engaged. It's not important to me. I don't feel like a better player. I don't feel like I was smarter because I rolled and got a 5 instead of a 4. It just, there was no part of me in that. It's just the die. It's mindless. I don't care. Might as well flip a coin, which you could also do. Don't do that either, I suppose. So I don't mean to dog on that. This isn't necessarily this game's fault. This is a multitude of games, at least this year, that I've reviewed that just have a ton of skill checks in it. And I want more. I want more than a skill check. Have me do something. Have me make a decision. Have me be involved in it a little bit. And not just hey, would you like to roll a 4 or like if you give me an option of rolling between my strength and my charisma, I just look to see which one's higher and do that. Again, it's still I'm not invested. I'm not trying. I don't like it. I don't like it. I'm not a designer. I'm not trying to solve the riddle of how to do something better than a skill check. I just know the skill check isn't the answer for me. Maybe it is for you. Maybe you love it. Maybe it's fun to randomly try and get a 5 for whatever reason. It's not for me. It really isn't. So yeah, this is just like, map modes galore and that whole genre. This is just like a lot of the story-based narrative things that you're used to. You read, you roll randomly, you read, you roll randomly, not the meat and potatoes. Now, another thing to note here is, like when you're going through the town phase or even a path card or whatever, sometimes you'll come across them and they'll have an event. Now, the thing with a game like this is, and I don't know how many cards they're getting, but be sure to look for this on the campaign. Speaking of which, the campaign is linked down below in the description, of course, so you guys can check it out over on GameFound. But I don't want to ever see this card again once I see it the first time. Maybe in a whole separate playthrough, but if I have to go through the same random, burglary or shady, clerk or, whatever it might be, I don't want to do that multiple times in the same campaign, if that makes sense. So it needs enough path cards to where I don't see that again. Because if you guys have played enough narrative games, especially if you've played narrative games multiple times, sometimes I'll have a narrative game going with my local family, my family in this home, and sometimes it's one with my friends, and sometimes it's one with my extended family. My parents will come over and we'll do that sometimes. And so I'll have different versions of the same campaign going on, and you get to the point, especially if you're repeating stuff, you're just like, I'm not reading that again. Oh, it's the Lost Boy. Which one do you want to pick? Right? Never fun. Don't want to do that. So definitely want to avoid. It's not a positive or negative because I don't know what it'll be, but I do sincerely hope it's not repeated content. If they're going to be events in the town things, and you better have a bunch of these cards. So every time I go to the town, I'm seeing different stuff, which is kind of dangerous because in this game, you can go to the town all the freaking time if you want. Literally after you do anything, you're like, you can go back to town or you cannot. And I chose to not, but there could be the turtle, group that always goes back to town constantly. And, you just want to watch out for that. So something to note there. All right, for my next point, I actually have my notes here because I want to make sure I get this right, and then there's no way I can repeat this exact, and I want to make sure I get it right. So there's too much context switching right now, and part of that is because there's the setup, then there's like the storybook, and then there's the terror book, which is just like events. Return to 1005 or whatever, and then there's the story, which is like section 4, section 3, section 16, go to section 80, and then go back to section 52, and so you have that. But then you also have cards on here that you're reading as well, and then you're doing a few other things. So I found myself going from here to going from there to going from there to going from here to so much that I actually wrote down the process. So here is one simple playthrough. This is just like the context switching at play here. You start in the storybook. Repeat, that's where I can actually speak. You start at the storybook. You then go to the city location. You read the card, which makes you go to the terror book. So you read the entry and then go to the character board because you're going to roll skills and you need to check your skills. Then you go back to the terror book because you now did the skill check and you need to read that entry, whichever one, pass, fail. And then you have to repeat another skill. So I had to do it twice because it was like one led to another. I failed one and then it had me do another thing. And so then I had to skill check that. Go back to the terror book, read entry, repeat skill, roll twice. Okay, that's where I was. Go back to the storybook, go to the path card. So after the storybook, then we had to go to the path card where you're going to the location. So it's this one right here, which was an event. Go to the terror book for that event. Go back to the storybook again now that you're done with that to build up to this. Go to the nest. That's this. Get the objective, okay, which we got. So then you play through the objective. And then you go back to the storybook and then to another path card on your way back. And then yet another terror book from that path card. And then a storybook to repeat the same cycle over and over again. So now I'll read it one all the way through so you can get a sense of just how much this is. Start at storybook, go to city location, read card, go to terror book, read entry, go to character board, roll skills, go back to terror book, read entry, repeat skill, roll twice, go back to storybook, go to path card, go to terror book, go back to storybook again, go to the nest, get objective, and go back to storybook, another path card, and yet another terror book, then storybook to repeat the same cycle. So yeah, there was a lot of I found myself just constantly if this was physical, thankfully, my books were digital, so I could just alt tab through them, right? So I could go storybook, terror book, no. But if you had to have the things here and you're removing them around and, okay, read that and you read through 2 sentences, okay, check this, and then you're checking that, and then you go back and then you go back and read that, okay, check this now again, and so then you go back and you check that again, and then you go back to that and you're okay, so now you're now you're done with that, so then you go back to here and you're okay, let's go to the dungeon, so then you flip this and you read this, which means you go back to that. I'm fine with a lot of story interspersed in what I'm doing, but it needs to flow well. It's the difference between reading about mechanics and playing a game with the mechanics implemented, right? Those are a whole bunch of cool ideas, and you could have 50 cool ideas, but if they don't flow well, then you need to make sure that flows well. That's the skill. Part of that will just be, I think, combining some things perhaps. Perhaps putting some things in line might help. I think the storybook could probably accommodate most of the terror book in there, perhaps. I don't know. Or perhaps it's just not. I mean, maybe it's just the cards being an extra step. Maybe that's just not what you want. It's iffy, but I'm not the designer, right? I'm just the person telling you my thoughts on it. And my thoughts on it was, it was a little clunky, with the flow of everything. Now, I'm personally pretty perceptible. It's a pet peeve of mine to context switch. It's one of the reasons I don't like the app so much, because I feel like I'm going from the app to the game, back to the app to the game. It's oh, spawn those guys. Okay, spawn those guys. Okay, they're talking to me. Okay, now roll the skill. Okay, now, I don't like that context switch. The focus on the little screen, or even if it's up on a TV or whatever, it just, I feel like I get whiplash, right? Run back and forth, right? Get a little dizzy. I felt like that here, where it was just too much this to this to this to this to this to this, back and forth. So I know I spent a long time on that, but it's something I really want them to work on and try and smooth that out, because I think that would make me appreciate each of the steps more, because individually I think they're all really good. I just want to make sure it flows really well. So, once you get into the town phase and you're doing the town phase, it's pretty good. Once you get into the dungeon crawl and you're doing the dungeon crawl, it's pretty good. It's just the interconnecting pieces that seem to be a lot. All right, but let's talk about what goes smooth and what's really good, and that is the combat. The combat is quick, and I really actually appreciate it. It's really just, and in fact, I roll the defense die with it. Why not? I don't think it really says to, but you could. So you can just go, and if you have, if they're rolling 2 yellow and you're rolling a blue and a green, you can roll all those together and instantly see that, okay, those 2 cancel out, and that one cancels that one out, and then I have 2 here and you have 2 there. And then you're done. It's not the instant, I know exactly what happened, and that's because there's other places to check. However, it is quite smooth. It is fairly straightforward. It's basic math, which I always appreciate. I'm not trying to match a whole bunch of symbols together and, I got a star, diamond, and a happy face and a poop emoji, and that means I do my special attack here, but the one that does double damage if I'm in it. It's not that complex, and I actually think it's a good thing. It means it's just, I don't want to have to do a research paper on what I got from my die results. I want to be able to roll my dice and fairly quickly know exactly what happened, and this does that. Now, it is kind of at the limit to my preference, but my preference is almost instantaneous, so I'm a little extreme on that side, but I really don't want to have to go investigate. Okay, I rolled, now what? I want to have an instant reaction of, oh yeah, that's perfect, or oh no, that's not. So it's really nice to be able to do that. Now, with that good, quick combat, which I did really enjoy, and overall combat's great, you are checking quite a few places. It reminds me a little bit of Massive Darkness 1, where you're checking. In Massive Darkness, even if I check the board, I think it's worse on Massive Darkness, because there was a lot of other things you had to check, but you are still checking multiple locations. And so what you're doing is you're checking the dice, right, and they interact. But then you're also checking your weapon, because if you're attacking with a weapon, it might have some special stuff on here that you're doing here, and you'll get special things here. Even if you're not using a weapon, you still have to see, okay, so I instantly get 2 speed and 1 damage additional to my blue, but then you also have special abilities here that can add to that. So I may have already paid to get an extra speed, so I have an extra speed there, but then you also have to check them because they might have some shields there. So you still have to check here, you have to check here, you have to check here, and you have to check here. So there are a few locations there. Now, it's not too bad. You could technically even do a combo attack, more on those later, but it's not instantaneous either, right? There is a little bit of investigation, especially if you do a critical on the bad guys and stuff like that. So you're checking a few things. It goes quick, so I still liked it, but it was at the limit. So I'm glad they stopped where they are, and I don't want anything else added in there. If I see a stretch goal or something like that where it's like, here's this new thing you can do with combat, this other thing you can check out, like, I don't want it. I like it the way it is. Don't add any more to it. If you're going to do anything, take away. No, I'm not saying do that. I'm just saying I don't want it to be fussy. I want to just roll dice and know what I did and kill vampires and just leave it at that. That's all I want to do. So yeah, good combat. You do have to check a few places, which is kind of a bummer, but it's fine. Okay, so these combo attacks, I did kind of mention this. These are actually kind of cool. I kept forgetting about them in my playthrough. I imagine as you go through, obviously you'll get more and more used to them. And I kind of had them off to the side instead of where they are right here. And I think we probably should have done that, so I would have remembered a bit more. And also, I think you will just kind of remember, oh, this is the dive bomb, oh, this is the distractor, the double melee, or the hold, which are the 4 options that I have here available to me. There might be more, but either way, they're actually quite nice. Anything, because it involves an active hunter, in other words, a person who has a turn, and the inactive hunter. In other words, if I'm here with this guy, and my buddy's over here, I can do something where I can hold this guy and then he can come in and attack him, kind of thing. So it allows you to work together even when it's not your turn. It means that you're paying attention, because a lot of times the inactive person still has to pay with these blood vials. More on those later as well. And so I really like that. It keeps everybody engaged at the table. It means you don't just play your turn and go make a sandwich and say, oh, call me back when it's my turn, and then everybody has to go find you or whatever, and you're busy taking a a nap in the dog bed. I don't know, whatever. The point is it keeps everybody at the table, keeps everybody engaged and planning things out. Now, a lot of that is the hero turn as well. Again, we'll talk about that in a little bit, but I really liked these combo attacks. I'm talking about combat right now, so we're going to focus on combat. Speaking of combat, these special attacks are very cool. I like them. So you have these cards here, and you have to like match the symbol, and you can adjust which way they are. I only have 2 here, but you'll eventually get more. And essentially, they allow you to do different things, like either add a die to your ranged attack, or be able to re-roll an attack, or get increased defense, or whatever. And so you have to pay, again, these vials for them. But they're really, really nice to be able to do that. I really enjoyed having to decide it, because everything except the re-roll, you have to decide before you do it. So you have to look at them, and you can see exactly what you'll get instantly, plus of the variability of dice. You'll see exactly what they have, plus the variability of dice. So it's like you have a good estimate. Like, okay, I need to have 3 speed. He's going to cancel at least 1 of my 2 here, which means I need to get at least 2 speed. Now, I'm rolling a blue and a green, so it might be possible. But you know what? I'm going to go ahead and add this to that, and I'm going to get the extra speed. I think it's worth it. It's that nice mitigation that also is a decision point that I really do like. And in fact, there's even some manipulation there with the reroll. Not a whole lot. Typically what you roll is what you get. Almost always what you roll is what you get. Don't expect to be re-rolling tons of dice. But there are typically options to add dice or add raw stats, which are also really nice. In other words, I don't want to add a green die that might get me a speed or might give me an attack. I want that speed. I'm going to pay and get that speed bonus. Very nice to be able to do that. Really did enjoy picking that. One of the best parts of the combat, in my opinion. I really did enjoy having to decide that, oh, do I want to, do I not? Part of that's because of paying these blood vials. Again, I will talk about that in a little bit, but the reason I'm not going to move on to that yet is because there is one negative about these, and that's the fact that they're fairly abstract. They're just a mechanic. There's no like these are... In the first one, you have like an actual ability, and in this one, you don't even really have that. You have symbols, right? That you're kind of arbitrarily picking. Like, there's no thematic lore reason that I'm able to add a green to my ranged. It's just a mechanic. There's no theme wrapping even around it. It's literally just, I have the symbols here, I can do them. Why? Sure, because it's mechanic and it's fun, and it is a fun mechanic, but more often than not, I like my mechanics to make thematic sense. And so when they are just raw mechanics without even really an attempt to put a theme on it, I will call it out as a negative. I think it would be really nice if we could get some kind of thematic to it, even if it was just something like slug shot or I don't know, whatever, explosive rounds, whatever. Call it whatever you want. Put a name there that makes it seem like, okay, no, I'm not just paying for a green. I'm gonna do an explosive round shotgun blast, and that adds a green, right? It's just that little bit of theme that I think really, really matches, because otherwise you're left with just the mechanic, which is a solid mechanic, but this is not a Euro, and I actually want to have like a thematic fun and engagement, not just like it's not a puzzle, right? I'm not trying to solve a puzzle. I'm trying to have a good time slaying vampires with my random green die that just shows up that means nothing. So yeah, theme on that would be great, because it's a fantastic mechanic that I really enjoy, and I want to fully be immersed within it so that I can have that. Man, do you remember when you shot with that huge buckshot and it just like killed everybody in the room because that was the thing there? Well, I want that to be there if possible. Nobody has to listen to me, but this is my opinion after all. Okay, let's take a step back and look at this dungeon crawl, because at the end of the day, this is a side mode. This shopping phase / skill check phase / we'll talk about that in a little bit. This is the meat and the potatoes, the main course, and even the side dish as well. That's just dessert. That's the cherry on top. So this is by far why you're here. If you're not here for this, if you're here for this, you're backing the wrong game. Don't pay money for it. This is not why you buy the game. this is why you buy the game. So I'm very big on pointing out the core nugget. What are you doing the most? What is your most common thing? Why are you here? Why'd you drive to somebody else's house on your Saturday? Because you're a busy person and you got the babysitter and you're ready to play a game with all of your friends and you ordered pizza. Why did you do that to play this? So let's talk about this. This goes really smooth. Really smooth. I love how streamlined it is. I really do. It's just pleasant to play through. I talked about the context switching, and that's totally there, but not when you're here. When you're here, no, it's not that cool. When you're here, it's really, really enjoyable. So when you walk in, right, and everybody's like asleep, they were like on their side or whatever, right, because they sleep during the day, and you're like stealthily trying to kill everybody, and you're rolling, and when they're asleep, they don't roll defense. There's no defense check. And so there's just a speed check. And so you're just kind of silently killing them and you just roll and you do the damage and that's it. You're done. And then you walk through here and you take this and you draw this and you spawn a guy here and you spawn I put the token. I don't have the token. There's a corpse token. You put the corpse token on 3 and then you put this guy on 1. There, done. You're done spawning. Now you do your attack on the guy that just jumped up in your face. He should be laying down. That's really it. It's really smooth. You have 3 actions. Some people can like pay for more and stuff like that, so you have some variety there. There's no like even weird like trying to like open a door or anything like that. All the doors are actually already open, so you're just moving through them, which is I think also another change. So it's just, it's really nice. I really like it. You know, you open up a window and you kill everything inside of it and you're good to go there. When it wakes up, everybody just pops up and then you're done. So you just pop everybody up. It plays really smooth. I love the spawning. That goes quick. I love the combat. That goes quick. The turn order goes quick. The actual turn that you have goes quick. There's no like super involved side game you're doing or anything like that makes your turn last a really long time. Everybody's engaged in what your turn is and what the outcome is because you're trying to efficiently kill everybody in the daytime before it gets night and they become stronger and harder and more aware of you and rolling defense. So you're just silently like killing vampires like left and right, just shanking them in the necks. And then eventually they catch wind of what's going on and they're like, hey, and then they attack you and then it's bad. And it's really nice. I really enjoyed the play of this. I don't want to say buttery smooth, but it's like margarine smooth. It's like almost butter. Like, you can't believe it's not butter. I really was enjoying this a lot. It reminded me a lot of Zombicide. Not in how Zombicide plays, but in the smoothness of, okay, your turn. You do your turn. You're doing basic actions. You spawn, and you keep going. There's interesting decisions in this one. I'm really enjoying. Again, those skills are really cool. Turn order is really cool. There's a lot of stuff going on for this that I really enjoy. But yeah, really did like this. And I want to stress that because at the end of the day, this is the game. And I found the corpse token. It's right here. Now, one of the cool things is actually the spawn. If I look back on this, there's an little exclamation mark here. So while normally, especially in the day, instead of just spawning a whole bunch of sleeping vampires, every now and then you can walk in here and spawn a guy that is not asleep, that is awake, and right there in front of you. And so when that happens, you actually are able to do a free attack. But if you don't kill him in that attack, which he is awake, which means he will roll defense, so it's going to be a harder kill, he shrieks and everybody in the room wakes up. So, yeah, I really enjoy that because it makes it to where even though everybody's asleep, as far as you know, you don't want to like go into a new room as your last action. Because, or if you do, you want to make sure that there are other people there or that you can handle it or whatever it might be, right? It's just, it's really nice to kind of see that. Now, that also depends on your character because each character is different. I always like to note if characters actually are different, and they really, really are. And they feel different because they have different strengths depending on their equipment, depending on their skills. So for instance, This person right here is, this person right here, freaking Speedy Gonzalez, and that's because they can actually pay to have an extra action. They can have 4. Now, that means they can do a whole bunch of light attacks, but it also means they can move a lot more, which was really good when we need to go in here and get the freak out of there. It's just, okay, will everybody else kill, and you're just going to go there. Now, there's the difference between this guy, who's really fast, and this guy, who is the opposite of fast. And so the difference between them is the fact that this person has a gun that they can shoot very fast. So they are targeting them and shooting them at range. You can't do it up close. But then you're having to be careful because you can't shoot through doors because the shooting does make noise. If you're shooting into another room, they'll get noise too. And so you kind of wanted to execute them silently. Or the hammer guy, who not only has no problem going on his last turn because he's got 2 shields and a reroll on his defense and is just a tough cookie. So he can just go in there and be like, okay, I don't care what spawns on me. But he also has a very strong melee that does a lot of extra damage. So if there is something that's highly defensive like this, you can break through it. So you're going really slow and everything you do is slow. However, you're hitting extra hard, especially up close. There's the person that's better at opening doors versus the person who can't, or windows versus the person who can't even open windows. There's a lot of that kind of stuff at play. So while there's not necessarily unique actions, there's not like they call them abilities, but the abilities are just stat bonuses. They are still impactful. And then of course you have your actual weapons and ammo and stuff that you can do as well. And I enjoyed it enough and felt that they were different enough. I played a few of the different characters and I quite enjoyed all of them, really. None of them felt bad at all, which was kind of nice. So, and they do all actually have a ranged option, which is nice as well. It's not just like, oh, I'm just melee, so I have to like huff and run and everybody's just shooting things and I don't even get there. So, that is definitely there as well. Okay, so they're all different, and that matters because the turn order matters. You get to pick your turn order, and I love that. It just makes the actual order that we do things part of the strategy. It means essentially the whole player round is one big combo, right? And so it's like, okay, so you're going to come here, you're going to come out. When you come out, I want to make sure that all the enemies are gone there, so we need to get them there. But there's a tough guy there and one of the people we have to shoot, but the shooting will wake up the tough guy, so the tough guy has to go first. Well, enter Mr. Hammerman. So the Hammerman goes in there, freaking whacks on the guy, kills him silently with his melee so that the other person can come in and shoot them and not wake anybody else up because they're the only one left. So the turn order can matter there, really can. Or the fact that all the enemies with their AI, which again, buttery smooth, works super well. The AI will attack whoever is active, not necessarily just whoever they're closest to. In other words, the person running around, attacking people at the time. You can actually be like, well, while they're here, you need to be able to leave that. And so all I have to do is come in here and start, attacking people here, making noise, and they will come and try to attack me. And you can just say, all right, yeah, go ahead, and just not try and fight them back. They can come in here, and now you're free to go. Right? So you're really comboing off each other, and again, helps you be invested at the table at all times. You're not bored here. There's not a time where you're like, oh, I'm going to go check Facebook, or I'm going to be on my phone, or I'm going to do this, or I'm going to do that. You're there, you're playing the game with everybody, you're talking with everybody around the table, and that's a wonderful experience. Another thing that changes things up is this day-night cycle. Now, this is the same as the original one, almost exact, where you have daytime and nighttime. In the day, they have a certain mode, they're a little bit weaker, they're sleeping. At night, they have a different mode, you flip them, they're stronger, and they're actually rolling defense and aware and attacking you and stuff like that. So there's that very cool cycle where you're trying to, it's almost like a phase. You can think of it like the Wolfenstein or Reichbusters phase and stuff like that, where you're trying to go in, you're trying to be quiet. For the most part, you can be kind of noisy as long as there's only one enemy in there or no enemies in there. And so that's also kind of nice, but you're really in there just like stealthily trying to like wipe out groups, because the more you kill now, there's not like respawns, like, oh, they're going to spawn again. So what's in here is what's in here. So the more you can kill when it's easy, the easier it'll be when they're hard, if that makes sense, because there's less of them. Now, one of the nice things as well is this is not a hard limit. It can loop. Now, once it loops, they don't go back to sleep. They're not just like, I know you're here, but I'm going to go take a nap. They will stay awake even in the day. However, they will not go in daylight areas, so the more windows you open, the more safe areas you have. But additionally, once you reach that one, once it goes back to day, you've essentially taken too long. And so what happens is they all start congregating in the objective room. So if you didn't do a good job and there's a whole bunch of guys there, it might essentially be a game over, in which case you can't actually retreat. You can't just say, we didn't do it, let's retreat, let's come back, let's recess our strategy, let's go, sell some stuff and get some equipment, or, do whatever it is you need to do and try something else. Which, again, you can then go back to the nest and try again. Or if you actually did pretty good, even though they all go back, if there's only a couple left, you can still get them. Or if you open up enough areas to where they can't pass through because they can't, like, if they're over here and this is lit up, well, they can't go back. They would die here. And so they're stuck there, right? And so as long as you did good enough, there is still chance for you to go forward with things, which is kind of nice. And there is a bit of a fail forward mechanic as well. So I really did enjoy the day-night cycle. I think it makes thematic sense. It makes the game interesting. The only bummer I think I had was I went into this thinking it was even, like, I have all the time in the world. But no, because typically you start at like hour 4. So you only have like 3 rounds of daylight and then all the rounds of night. And so you really got to get in there and do what you need to do. You got to be kind of like a Navy SEAL, Marine stuff. Let's go and like take them out and do what you need to do. So really did enjoy that mechanic. All right, wrapping up combat, just about. We got the vials still, but the boss mechanic here, I really do enjoy. So essentially you have the mechanic where you have these different cards that are like abilities. So you have attack abilities and defensive abilities. And each one of those has kind of a health value that you have to get rid of. Once they're all gotten rid of, then the enemy's dead. So that's how its health is determined. And as you deal the damage, they will start losing abilities. It shows that they're weaker, right? In this case, there are 2 attack ones. So once it's at half health, it's now just only defensive and it's not attacking nearly as much anymore. But it could be that it's still attacking at full strength and it's not as defensive anymore, or some variety of the two. It just depends on the layout of it, because you actually start on one and then go like in order. You can't just attack a part or an attack. Again, it's slightly abstract. Not nearly as much as the special abilities, but it is a little bit like the health mechanic on each part, or it's not really a part. It's more like a specific ability of it or an attack of it, or this one, right? So you're starting here on 2 actually is where you start on, which again, whatever. It has it to where it can actually heal as it attacks. So I have to do 4 damage to him and then he can't heal himself anymore. As long as I don't think too hard, like it just takes a little bit of a leap of faith to, okay, yeah, or a leap of believability or whatever you want to call it, to kind of go. It's not the best thematic, but it is a very enjoyable mechanic, and it does have that theme still on there. It kind of reminds me a little bit of a boss battler, right? Where you can attack certain parts, and as they get damaged, they react in different ways, and eventually as they get more and more damaged, they might fundamentally be acting different. In this case, not nearly as aggressive, because they don't, they can't heal anymore, and they're not doing criticals anymore. That's the other card, that's the next card they do, but they're still just as defensive as ever. There's not an AI change per se, though whatever was on this cards they don't do anymore. And this one, they can actually start spawning people, and then they lose ability and they're not spawning people anymore. So really did enjoy it. It's a very streamlined way, which again is what this whole mode is about, is streamlining, really. So a little bit the combat. A boss battle, or at least the nugget of one, right? The kind of core of one. Really did enjoy it. I thought that was quite nice. It was actually really enjoyable and an improvement from what I can tell the first one was, because this is definitely new to this mode, and I really did enjoy it. So yeah, very good. I really enjoyed that one a lot. All right, let's talk about weapons. These weapons are cool, and that's because you can craft them. So when you first get them, they're called a parchment. It's really a blueprint, and they'll have a list of materials you need. You go get those materials, you go to the blacksmith, he makes you a shotgun, or a big axe, or the impaler, or whatever it might be. And then they have these different ammos. This one shoots silver bullets, which are really strong. You have to buy those, and you can only get, 3-4 shots out of them. You're not using them all the time, but they are they're good boss fighters, first of all. But yeah, they're really, really fun, and it's cool to get one for sure. You're not getting a ton of items and equipment here, and so that is really impactful, and the crafting of it is kind of fun too. It's one of the things I see that Darkgate Games, I think, really does enjoy is this crafting, because this has it, Dark Rituals had it, Neomorphosis has had it, so they really do enjoy this kind of get materials and build things. And I do too. So here I am, enjoying it here, enjoyed it in Dark Rituals, and I'm back to Neomorphosis because that sounds fun too. So I really do dig the whole crafting thing, and it's kind of a nice thing to have in there. But again, it's just, it's very light. You're just, like in this one, you're literally getting 3 different things. You can buy them all, and then go to the blacksmith and make it. Like it's there, but again, don't buy this because it's a crafting game. This is not Monster Hunter, okay? This has a little bit of crafting in there too. A little bit of a city phase for your dungeon crawl. Does that make sense? Okay, now there are some interesting things with this dungeon crawl that I want to know. One is that there are side objectives, which I did really appreciate. I like the fact that there are side objectives. I think it's super cool because it kind of allows you to be like, we could just go and just get the objective, or we could do the side one. Now, with the prototype, it didn't matter as much because it's not a big campaign, but in your campaign, that'll matter. You'll get different rewards if you are able to do those side objectives, but it comes with the risk of obviously getting hurt. But it also rewards doing really well because, like in this one, for instance, I had to get the objective, but the side objective was to make sure all the vampires, in other words, the nest was exterminated, all the vampires were dead. Now, if you did really good to where you weren't just like running out with a whole bunch of enemies, then you could probably get that objective anyway because there's only probably a few more left. You're not going to get super hurt from it. If there's a lot and you didn't do good and you're just trying to get out with the objective, you still can do that. But you don't want to go and then kill everybody because there's still so many left and they're probably all awake and it's really bad and you're going to get really hurt. So it offsets the reward you would get. So it does reward better gameplay. So the better you play, the more often you can get that bonus objective. And really did enjoy that. It's a nice reward for doing really well, for working well as a team, for being smart about it and doing what you need to do, which is cool. I really did enjoy that a lot. I think that's really nice. Now, another thing that you can do is you can turn. So you have your regular guy, and then you have your turned guy. Now, this is an optional gameplay mode. You don't have to play this way, but it is better, I think, for a few reasons. First of all, it means that there's no player elimination, at least. I mean, you can actually die in this mode as well, and then you really are kind of eliminated to go make a sandwich, go get on your phone, do whatever. You can also talk with everybody, which is what I normally do anyway, though thankfully I didn't die. But it is kind of cool. Essentially, you flip into a turned mode, and now suddenly the vampires ignore you, and you can actually attack them, or attack your teammates even. But you might not, because what you do is you actually draw one of these cards that it gives you essentially you're compelled to do something, a compulsion. And so this one, you must destroy or wound a hunter each time you activate, or you take 3 damage. Or in this one, you must destroy a vampire each time you activate. If you end your activation in an air with a hunter, that hunter takes 1 damage. So one's a fresh blood, one's a turncoat, one's a quick kill, one's a distracted. You must inject 3 vials each time you activate. So you're just injecting all your vials. So there's all this kind of interesting, play where you're almost a third party more than against, but more often than not, you're not attacking a vampire, you're attacking a hunter. But you might just be injecting yourself with a whole bunch of blood, so from vials. You do whatever you need to do, I guess, whatever you're compelled to do, which is kind of the whole point. It's an interesting thing, and it keeps you in the game, which is kind of nice as well. And then afterwards, they can actually bring you to the town, and you can go to the church there or the chapel there, and you can get done what needs to be done to get better. And so then you're back into it. So you never had to leave the table. You're never disengaged. You were still doing stuff. A nice option for people that are fine with doing that. Not everybody will be fine because at that point it's not quite fully co-op. So you don't have to play that way, which I also appreciate. So yeah, just the options are better. And I anything that prevents you from leaving the table and being bored for the rest of your Saturday because you died is good in my book. Okay, now, I almost forgot about this, but these blood vials, speaking of blood vials, are really nice. It kind of reminds me of the ammo system in Wolfenstein. If you saw my review of Wolfenstein, you know that is a very good compliment because I loved the ammo system. Now, this is simpler, but it's not. The ammo system had multiple ammos, and depending on what you had, you used different ammos, and so you're trying to like get a variety of ammos, whereas this is just the blood vials. However, the blood vials can do the special abilities, can do the combo attacks. You might use them when you're turned. So there's a variety of reasons to do that, and each character has a limit, and sometimes a different limit. Some can handle more than others. In this case, Kirk can only handle 3. Once you do 3 of them, well, then you actually take a damage. And so every 3 you use, you take a damage. So while they're powerful, you don't necessarily want to use them. And so there's that little pull of like, especially once you get 2, right? Because the first 2 are like, oh, no problem. So it's like if you've seen the new movie Jumanji where they have 3 lives, right? And they're like, yeah, whatever, we'll just kill each other and die. But then the moment you're on your last life, suddenly it matters. Same kind of thing. You'll casually use 2. But that last one, you're literally thinking, is that green die worth the damage? Because that's really what you're paying at that point, right? And I really enjoyed it. I liked the fact that it was used in multiple areas for multiple things. I liked that it was really just one system, that it's very streamlined. As you kill enemies, you get their blood vials, and so you're incentivized to maybe kill a whole bunch and get a whole bunch for the boss. So, for instance, I fought the boss and I had two ads, right? 2 other enemies. Now, if I kill the boss, I win, right? And so it's like, whatever. But if I kill... So maybe I just focus on them. But if I kill the ads, I get their blood vials, and they were dropping like, I think, 4. And so then all of a sudden I have more and I can better deal with the boss. But it took long because I had to deal with ads. So you're weighing all this in your head. And from something that's just as simple as you move this over here and you do the thing. That's it. And so again, I really enjoyed that. Those blood vials were really cool. And they're used in the story too. Sometimes you can gamble with them. Other people might try to steal them. You might give them to someone. You might pay for something with it. You might gain it or try and get some more from it. And so you can gain some in the story mode as well. Again, really, really nice. Really liked that pretty much every facet of this game involves these blood vials. And that's a good thing because they're quite enjoyable. Now, one thing I'd like to note as a good thing, because I really enjoy this kind of thing. Not everybody will, but these windows, breaking it open and instantly killing any vampire in that entire room is really overpowered. And I love it because it's fun. It's fun to just be like tiptoeing, dead, and then you gain all their blood vials. It feels great. I love it. I love the kind of the power fantasy play there, right? Of just. But I also love the fact that you have to like sneak around these like sleeping vampires to do it. It just. Thematically, it's fun. Gameplay wise, mechanically, it's fun. It was just, and I love doing it every time, even if I didn't necessarily have to. Sometimes because the window then stays lit every time during the day, so again, it's more beneficial. It improves the map layout, and in that small sense, the map layout is even changing from it. Yeah, really enjoyed it. It's nice. I was very happy with it, and how overpowered it was, and the fact that you could kill like 3 or 4 people with just attacking some planks of wood on a window. Quite nice. Okay, so getting towards the summary here, I really liked the variety that this game offers. So if you think about it, it's a light city phase game. It's a light boss battler. It's a light crafting game. And it's a meaty dungeon crawl game. So you have all these elements of just different flavors that you can do, even resource management, a little bit of a light resource management there, that are kind of nice. So you can have your dungeon crawl, which this is a dungeon crawl, but you have, and to be honest, even the story seemed a little light. At least what I was doing, mainly because it's not some cataclysmic event happening. There's no like end of the world. There's no arch villain or anything. At least not that I saw. So it's not like some major thing. Well, you're doing interesting things. It kind of reminded me of like a typical fantasy setting, right? Where you're just a person for hire and you're doing this kind of thing, but there's not a big deal involved. At least that I saw yet. But either way, you have these little kind of light nuggets for it. And this seems to be a theme lately because I just reviewed Harakiri and I talked about the map phase there and how light it was. This is definitely more streamlined than that, and like that map mode was more meaty than any of these, I felt. But it means you're not just setting this up and just doing the town phase. That's not your whole game session, so you don't have to worry about it. And it can be as short as you want it to anyway. But you also don't have to worry about some overly complex AI system with your boss battler, or some convoluted crafting scheme where you have tiers of resources and all this other stuff like you would in some kind of more Euro-based game where you have a lot of different components. And I have 2 wood and 3 steel and this, and that allows me to do this, which then I can trade for higher profit. Like it's not that involved. It's just a fun little crafting thing. It's a fun little boss battler. It's a fun little town phase, and a mini dungeon crawl. And that's a great combo, in my opinion. You get some nice flavors, you get some nice variety, you're doing some different things, and that's really nice. And then the fact that they have, essentially, when you're doing the boss, it's not necessarily like it's not just another dungeon crawl. At least the one I played, it's very different. You walk in there, there's a boss, you're in essentially an arena, and you just go to town. Now, it's not like a arena. I shouldn't have said arena, because you're going to think like it's an arena combat, like a boss battler, like a Aeon Trespass or Kingdom Death Monster or something like that, where you have that big... It was a normal map tile like this, but it was very much set up like I'm fighting the boss. So it felt a little bit different. There was a path that you can play that's outside that again feels a little bit different. So it was just, I really liked the variety. It was actually quite nice. As long as you know that you're not getting a lot of crafting, you're not getting a lot of town phase upkeep or anything like that. You're not getting a super duper meaty boss battler. You're just getting nice little samplings. So just go into it expecting that. Okay, now I'd like to end with a summary, but right before I get to the summary, I want to note just some things I want to point out. Again, this is because it's beneficial to say something like this in a review, because it's more likely to get addressed, right, than just a little comment from me or even an email from me. And because it's just stuff that I've noticed, and stuff that's helpful to know, again, where it is in development, where it is in that, and kind of what fit and finish you can kind of expect as well, perhaps. You can read into it however you wish. Again, this is a prototype. So there are some oddities. So for instance, I feel like this is not done very well. So first of all, this is a boss, and yet they still have the like, if it's 1 space away, do this. If it's 2 spaces away, do that, which is fine, I suppose. But all the enemies have this 2, and it can be simplified. Essentially, you need 1 number, not 2. So what it is this is saying every enemy that's within 1 space of the active person can go into their zone and attack. If they're 2 or more away, then they all just start stalking the hunters. So they just start moving towards them, but that's all they do. Which is very simple, and it's a nice streamlined AI system where essentially if it's close enough to attack, it's going to attack. Otherwise, it moves closer to you. Done. It's as simple as that, right? But you don't need the 2, because I even made sure that there wasn't like a gap, like, if it's 1 away, it attacks, and if it's 5 away, then it moves. But if it's 2, there's none of that. It's just, if it's 1 to 2 away, like this one is 2 away, so this is a faster guy, like I said, right? So you need that first number, but you don't need the 3 plus afterwards. It's just anything that didn't move into attack moves closer every single time. And so all you really need is the 2. Just say 2. Movement of 2, so we can move into 2 and then do that. Otherwise, it moves 1 space closer as it kind of slowly goes across the board. So you don't need 2 numbers. 2 numbers is, you don't need 2 numbers. It's just not needed. Another kind of oddity I found was, for whatever reason, and at least in the current beta early copy rulebook, it has me drawing the bottom of some things instead of the top, and I don't see why that's needed. If you're worried about peaking at the top, it's a cooperative game. Sorry. And otherwise, I don't understand why I'd have to take anything from the bottom of a stack versus the top of a stack. We're not placing things on the top or anything. It makes no sense. I don't know why it was even called out. This is kind of weird. And then the only other thing I noticed playing is actually this right here. So this is a spot where you put, and maybe you don't have to put it here, but it even shows in the rulebook putting it here. So when you get a blood vial, you flip it over and put it over here, and this says when you get 3, you do that. The problem is the moment you start putting stuff on there, you cover up the number. The number would be better used not on, like right in the middle, but around it, kind of like this weight here and this health here. There should be like a 3 maybe down here, or somewhere close by, right? But not in the spot where you're putting the tokens, because because you cover it up. And some people can have like 4. And it's easy enough to remember, but at the same time, it's weird to cover up a part of something like that. And it's a very easy UI change just to nudge it down a little bit. So, or to the side or whatever. So, that was really it of the kind of the oddities that I noted that, maybe could be improved a little bit. Otherwise, it was, again, pretty darn good. All right, so in summary, I would say that this is actually a very fun and streamlined game with a few rough patches. Now, while this is a prototype and it could be improved, I'm basing this off of my prior experience with the company and just my knowledge of it, that they're still working out the kind of like ultra, I mean, it's still very much an indie effort from them. And so while it's very commendable what they do, and I really enjoy what they do, which should show because I backed many of their games already. So, I believe I got everything on Neomorphosis and also in Dark Rituals. So there you go. But really, a fun game that I look forward to seeing and playing the final version of. I actually really do look forward to it. I think I'll have a lot of fun with it. I've enjoyed my time with this prototype. In fact, I think when it comes to comparing it to the old version, I like pretty much every change they did. Like, this boss mechanic is awesome. I dig it. Non-drawing a card for the enemies, but instead just having them react like that, really, really nice. And going on initiative order, that's fine. The city phase is really nice. The story shows a lot of promise. Like, everything that about this, I've really enjoyed, actually. I like the crafting. I like the streamlined dungeon crawl. I like the turn order. I liked the day and night cycle. The blood vials. The combat. It's all actually pleasant. There's those rough edges that like a little bit of clunkiness, a little bit of oddity and indiness that's in there. It's a good experience, and I'm glad that they took something as successful as their first Order of Vampire Hunters and decided not just to throw out another expansion real quick, but instead really try and, take their development, what they've learned and kind of apply it to this, and I think it's better for it. Really excited to see the campaign, to see what's unlocked. I'm going to be super excited. I'll be there with you guys if you choose to do that. If this looks like a good game for you, it is for me. It might not be for you. You guys make your own decisions on that, of course. I'm excited to see what it is, and I'm really excited to play the final version. I think it's going to be something I have a lot of fun with. But hey, you know what? If you want to see an unboxing and review of the final version and how it ends up, there is that subscribe button. If this review was helpful, either determining that the game is for you or not for you, either way, I'm happy that I could help. There is that like button as well. And if you have any questions, of course, the comments are down there too. You guys know I'm in there all the time talking with you guys. I always enjoy it. Like a community run channel, so super excited for that. And with that, I will let you guys go. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Take care, guys. Bye.